This conversation reveals a disturbing side of modern surveillance and the hidden connections between government programs, intelligence agencies, and powerful tech companies. What started after the 9/11 attacks as a secret government surveillance project may have quietly evolved into something much bigger. In this discussion, investigative journalist Whitney Webb explains how companies like Palantir may be connected to those early programs and why many critics believe modern technology is being used not just to monitor people, but to predict behavior before it even happens.
One of the few in independent media that does not like him. We can get into that later.
Can we get into that now?
Sure, if you want.
Yeah. Why? I mean, look, I can probably guess.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons, but I guess let's start off here. So I would argue that neoconservatives have very successfully rebranded, and I think Peter Thiel is a very important example of that. So Peter Thiel, as an example, Palantir has been in the news, right? He's a co-founder of that. So how was Palantir created? Well, there was this company that was being run, or not company, sorry. It was a government program after 9/11 called Total Information Awareness. It was housed within the Pentagon's DARPA office. And the man they chose to put in charge of that was John Poindexter, who was the highest ranking member of the Reagan administration to be indicted for his role in Iran-Contra, which again, the continuity of government stuff is relevant here. So eventually, it launches and whatever, but people are outraged by it because as they rightly pointed out, it would eliminate constitutional protections of Americans' rights, specifically the right to privacy, among other things. It was a huge surveillance dragnet, and its goal wasn't just to, surveil everything. It was to predict crime before it happens, predict terror.
In this first part of the discussion, Whitney Webb begins by explaining the origins of a controversial government program created after the September 11th attacks. The project was known as Total Information Awareness, a Pentagon initiative that aimed to collect massive amounts of data in order to predict potential threats before they occurred. Critics immediately raised concerns because the program appeared to remove basic privacy protections and create a surveillance system capable of tracking ordinary citizens. Webb suggests that even though the program faced public backlash and political pressure, the core ideas behind it never truly disappeared.
Attacks before it happens. I mean, it's like Minority Report was basically the end goal of it. And so after all the pushback, they changed the name to Terrorist Information Awareness and try and rebrand. Oh, it's not total. We are still gonna surveil innocent Americans, but we're focusing on the terrorists. They did all this stuff to try and rebrand it, but Congress defunded it. But hidden in that bill, Congress allowed aspects of it to continue. And essentially, I argue in my work on Palantir that an effort was made to privatize large aspects of TIA as Palantir. Because when Alex Karp and Peter Thiel were setting it up, they went to John Poindexter through this guy named Richard Pearl, who is a long-standing neocon actor with very extensive ties also to the state of Israel. He was caught in the 70s giving classified information to Israel's embassy and should have gone to jail and somehow did not. And had a lot of ties also to Netanyahu's first government. And Richard Pearl is the guy that connected Thiel Karp to Poindexter, and they basically wanted to talk to Poindexter because they wanted to recreate Total Information Awareness and saw him as the godfather of modern mass surveillance. And in doing so, they basically, Peter Thiel teams up with In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital firm. Alex Karp has said on record that the intended clients of Palantir from the beginning was the CIA. And, the CIA was their first client for their first 6 years as a company. Their top developers went to Langley, Virginia, which is CIA headquarters.
Here, Webb describes what she believes happened after Congress officially shut down the Total Information Awareness Program. According to her research, parts of that system may have been quietly transferred into the private sector. She claims that the technology and ideas behind the program were effectively privatized through companies like Palantir, which was founded by Peter Thiel and Alex Karp. Webb argues that the company worked closely with intelligence agencies from the very beginning, with the CIA reportedly acting as one of its earliest and most important clients.
Every 2 weeks to show the CIA their product and have them tweak it to their liking. And during that period of time, one of the top people at the CIA that would have been involved in that is this guy named Alan Wade, who was also intimately involved with total information awareness. And if you look at how total information awareness was described, its privacy protections, it's exactly the same as the way Palantir sold their stuff later on. So there's an insane amount of overlap. And what's crazy here is that Alan Wade, a few years prior, had created a Homeland Security software program that was also pre-crime-esque and similar to what Palantir ended up doing. It was called Kiliad, and he teamed up with Christine Maxwell to do that.
I wonder what the Whitney Webb file in Palantir is like.
I'm sure it's long.
It's got to know
they probably know I have a mold allergy and all sorts of stuff.
And that I'm visiting you, having a conversation.
Well, I mean, that's their job, right?
Well, it's funny. So let me.
But it's about pre-crime. It's about predicting stuff before it happens, and that's what I think a lot of people miss about Palantir. Because a lot of people say about mass surveillance, well, I have nothing to hide. But it's not about if you're doing something wrong now or not. It's about an algorithm thinking if you will do something wrong in the future.
I think I would definitely be on that algorithm. I think you would be as well.
At this point in the conversation, the discussion shifts toward how these systems may actually function. The host jokingly mentions what a personal file inside a surveillance system might look like, highlighting the broader concern that large databases could be collecting detailed information about individuals. This moment emphasizes one of the central fears surrounding modern surveillance technology, the idea that massive amounts of personal data are constantly being gathered and analyzed.
Well, the problem is that pre-crime has been inching along, and actually a lot of people in Epstein world, I mean, obviously Peter Thiel and Epstein had a relationship. More came out about this earlier this year after, Thiel kind of tried to minimize his ties a few months earlier. But Peter Thiel's Founders Fund co-invested in this company with Epstein and Wexner and Ehud Barak called Carbine that basically had a pre-crime component to it. And Carbine has now colonized an insane amount of 911 emergency call services systems like throughout the U.S. and are the main company at the forefront if this legislation in the U.S. is passed. It's called Next Generation or NG 911, where they're going to basically federalize and centralize all 911 emergency call systems. And then when you centralize it, you can just put one company in charge. They've changed the board a lot since the Epstein scandal because Ehud Barak was the chair and there were people on the board that were tied to Epstein, including a woman that he allegedly took to the UK to sort of soften up some US senators whose identity is still unknown before the Iraq war vote, but it's a story for another time. And, some other figures tied to Epstein were on the board, and it would formerly been created by veterans of Israeli intelligence. But now they only have one of the Israeli intelligence co-founders on the board. The others have left to do other things. One of them now works for Eric Prince, I believe. And, they've kind of gone their separate ways, and they've tried to rebrand as a more American-looking company, I guess. I think they added Trump's former head of DHS, Christy Nielsen, I think is her name, to the board, and they have Michael Chertoff, the former one of the early heads of DHS under Bush. There.
In this segment, Webb introduces the concept of pre-crime prediction, the idea that algorithms can analyze data patterns to predict whether someone might commit a crime in the future. This concept has appeared in science fiction for years, but Webb argues that certain companies are developing technologies that move in a similar direction. She also connects this idea to other companies and political figures, suggesting that surveillance infrastructure has expanded through partnerships between private companies and government institutions.
So it's like so everything and everyone is captured, and everything is corrupt. I mean, are they really good
I
guys?
think that's kind of a simplification. I think not everything has always been like that. I think this particular group, once they got their hands on power, it's a faction. They've been consolidating control for a long time. And I think the advent of technology, big tech sort of taking over our lives, has really facilitated that. Because the whole conclusion to my book is that why would you take someone like Epstein down? You don't need people like him anymore to compromise people, because all of our lives are increasingly online. So if they want something on you, they can just harvest it off through, whether it's, Palantir, it ends up in your Palantir database. Basically, it's sucked up by the NSA or GCHQ or any of these other agencies, and you're profiled based on it. Or if there isn't incriminating stuff, they can plant incriminating stuff on your devices.
So you're screwed either way.
If they want to screw you, I mean, sure, yeah. And so it's much easier to consolidate power under those circumstances.
Do you think there are...
And they elevate people who are compromised to positions of power. How did a guy like Dennis Hastert become Speaker of the House of the United States when it was known that he was a...
In the final part of the discussion, Webb explains why she believes modern technology has made traditional blackmail and intelligence tactics less necessary. She argues that when so much of everyday life happens online, digital data itself becomes a powerful tool for influence and control. According to her perspective, governments and powerful organizations can potentially gather enormous amounts of information about individuals, creating profiles that could be used for monitoring, pressure, or political leverage.